Hey everybody, welcome back to Content and Consequences. This is your host, Jordan Elizabeth Gelber, and we are on Content and Consequences, which is a podcast that focuses on creators who blur the lines between producer, writer, director, and actor. Featuring live readings of pilot extracts and interviews with successful creatives, this podcast explores the process and aftermath of developing content. As usual, I am on with my lovely co-host, the one and only Victoria Cherie Bennett. How are you?
Hello.
Content and Consequences is part of Rogue Matter, a new digital content platform providing programming and entertainment that shatters boundaries and colors outside the lines. Join the movement. Go Rogue. RogueMatter.com. Hello. And today we are bringing on a great guest. One of my good friends, Codey Wilson, is with us. Codey, what up?
What up? I forgot no one could see me. My wave is useless.
Hello. He's waving in case anyone wants to know. So today's a fun episode because Codey's one of my oldest friends. We've known each other for a very long time.
What's a very long time?
A very long time. I think we're coming up 7 years now of knowing each other.
Jordan, I think you were 24 because when I met you, I know you, what are you, a year or two younger than me? And I was
a year younger than you.
You're a year younger than me. Yeah, because I was 25 in New York City and I had a bartending job and you had produced that entire event at that club.
Yes, I did.
I remember once you told me your age. Yeah, once you told me your age, I was like, that's amazing. Like, what am I doing with my life? She's running all this. And yeah, you told me more about yourself and I was like, wow, who gave her permission to do this? And I had to really, that was my lowest point actually in life. You met me at my lowest.
Oh, and look at you now.
That night, actually, no, now that I'm thinking about it, my dad loves this story because I call it hot dog water.
Okay, yeah, go with it.
Yeah,
hot dog water.
That was the night. Yeah, well, which I remembered later. That was like a Limp Bizkit lyric. So now it's stuck to me. But
and now we aged all of us.
And now you said all of us. I was just going to throw myself under the bus. I don't care. You know what? When I'm in a mood, I listen to Limp Bizkit sometimes. It's
I
like
love
once
Limp
a year,
Bizkit.
And it just lets all the bad out, and it feels great. But no, that night, I was. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I've ever even told you this. Like I said,
I'm ready for this story.
Well, you were hosting a huge party at Toshi's Living Room. What is that, like Broadway and 27th or something?
Yeah, it was Toshi's Living Room. I was with my company, Star Baby Enterprises. We were still doing event production, and I had this task of producing a party for the launch of a dating app. And that was a weird time. It was the Heavenly Sinful party.
That was like, wasn't that the one with the NYU sororities or something there? Or was that a different night?
No, I think that we had a lot of different people there, but they had like multiple parties, but we had the entire rooftop and we had all these like step and repeats and all this stuff. And I was running the whole thing. Yeah. And my friend Yana was working with me.
Yeah. I don't know if it was that night or another night, but there was only one. There was only a few nights like this, but I was bar backing even. I wasn't even bartending in New York City yet because I didn't know anyone. And I was mopping in the back and a hot dog, something splashed into the mop bucket and it like splashed up on me. And I looked up and I saw these drunken sorority girls up on one of those balconies that was kind of up in the ceiling or something. And I remember looking over at my manager and she saw it. She read my eyes and she was like, "Are you quitting?" And I said, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm leaving." And that was so I don't know if it was your party or not, but that hot dog water was my defining moment. And I was like, that's enough. Like no more messing around. It's time to get serious. And I either met you that night or I'd already known you for a few weeks, but that's when I started like Pursuit of Happiness style mega busing down to DC in my one suit, like for government contracting jobs and like just trying to figure out ways to get out and change things. But that was my low point. I'm sorry for the long-winded, boring story. I just forgot.
No, it's great.
Are we in a hurry, by the way?
No, you're good. Are we in a hurry? Okay. A million hours later. No, I think it was right before you went back to DC and you were telling me all the stuff that you were doing. And I was like, hey, I have this company. And you're like, cool, what else do you do? And then we became friends. And we bonded over the fact that we both were actors / creative people. And we've tried to do a few things over the last few years, but I think before we like jump into how we know each other, it's just really cool. I think it goes back to the power of social media. I hate to say it, but the majority of our friendship has been this long distance. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what are you creating? What are you creating stuff? And just supporting each other, which is really amazing. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
I know Victoria's dying to know.
Who are you? Like, what do you do? How did you?
Well, until March 2020, I was producing commercials full time for a company that's now in New York City called Cry. Left production in LA to do that, where I PA'd for about a year and a half in LA, and that was cool. Did a little film school before that. Don't need to go down that path though. And then before that was DC, which right after the New York story, I got a government contracting job from a friend, which was awesome because it was more money that I'd ever made. And after about 3 months, once I was financially okay, I started to get the bug again. And I was like, oh no, if I don't do something, this will become my life. So I quit that amazing job and then dove back into film stuff. So it's been a weird, who am I? I guess it's been a weird seesaw since I was 18 years old of trying to keep my head above the water while also pursuing creative stuff. I have lived in more film cities and states than anyone I know, and it bore zero fruit moving to all those film states. I always thought it was like out scheming. Didn't bear any fruit. No, back in when I got out of the Army I came home from my second deployment. I think I was 22 years old. I went straight to Wilmington, North Carolina, and I met some of the cast of One Tree Hill who I didn't even recognize. And so they one of this guy, Austin Nichols, was really nice to me. And he was like, you should come to Oh, you know who that is?
I know Austin Nichols is.
I didn't watch the show, so I didn't know. I just became friends with him at Gold's Gym. And it was, I don't know, I was lucky thing, I guess. And he was like, you should come to LA. And I was like, yeah, okay. So then went to LA and actually, I mean, is it okay that I'm just rabbit trailing for no reason at all? I don't know.
You are here because we want to learn and listen from you. So
it's like opening a can of bad food and just spilling it all out.
No, I think it's good. All of us have different journeys that have taken us to where we are today. And like the purpose of this podcast is to show that everyone's journey is different and how you discover who you are and what makes you happy is different. And a big highlight on everything is that we all have that moment that we were finally like, no, this is what I'm supposed to do. And this is what I'm going to do to get there. And this might have been all the mess that I swam through to get there, but I'm still trucking along and I'm still making stuff and I'm still doing it. And not just because I've gotten rejected doesn't mean I've stopped. So your story is valid.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, you said moment. There was a moment actually, and it was in Wilmington, North Carolina. I went to the theater by myself and Tron had come out that year, and he's obviously doing great, and I am nobody compared to him, but I just saw Garrett Hedlund in Tron, and I was like, what the heck, man? Like, if he can do this, I can do this. And then I took Austin Nichols up on his word and just packed up and moved to LA almost immediately. And got out there, and I got lucky because I made a big, long list of agents and managers, and I found Garrett Hedlund's manager. And so after living in Sherman Oaks for a couple of weeks, thankfully, I still had some money for my deployments, so I didn't have to worry about work yet. But I snuck into his manager's building, and I kind of awkwardly went and sat on the couch, and he figured out really quickly. His assistant said, do you have an appointment? I was like, no. He was like, all right, man, come on in. And they were just into it. His name's Dino May. He was a nice guy, and he was very entertained by my shenanigans and my failed efforts. He was like, take the script out into the hall and then come back and read with me. And I did. And he was like, well, that was terrible, but you're very coachable. So he's like, let's try it out and see if it works. And a few months later, so we started auditioning, and it was really, it was getting exciting. It was very cool. And I knew nothing about anything. And I think starting just from trying to be an actor is a terrible place to start. If anything, if I could go back and do it again, I would have studied screenwriting or something so that you can really understand what this is all about. And it's just not knowing story. If you're learning as an actor, all you're thinking about is, why am I not getting a job? Why don't they like me? And you're thinking of it from totally the wrong place, which I'm sure you can understand having been in the world for so long. That's I wish I had done that first, because obviously understanding screenwriting, you would go in more passionately and be like, oh, this is what this character's here to do. But against his advisement, I was like, hey, we're moving to Santa Monica. And he was like, don't do that. You're not from LA. That's really far away. I was like, what are you talking about? It's 10 miles away. And where I'm from in Virginia, 10 miles means 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. The LA.
Not in LA.
Here in another part of the planet. And he was right. And I was so far away, I just couldn't do things. And then I needed a job. and then I needed a second job. And before I knew it, I was kind of priced out. So I started scheming. This was 2012, and there were rumblings about Georgia. So I kind of tried to like outsmart the system, if that makes sense. And so we left LA and tried Georgia for a few months. Not enough was going on there yet. I think then we checked out New Orleans for a little bit. That's when True Detective and stuff was filming in New Orleans. They were on a bit of a hot streak for a few years before they capped their incentives. I became a real nerd about state tax incentives and stuff, and studying what was happening and where. But then New York came after that, and that's where I met you, and then continued to move a lot after that too. But,
all over the United States. Just
yeah, looking
where's
back,
Codey today?
Yeah. Oh, it's certainly probably a mocking point for my family and friends at this point, because I've lived all over the place and had all these schemes for like, it'll work here because, or no, Austin, Texas this time because this, or no. So, and it's hard. I don't know how to turn it off. I mean, everyone's just trying to do the best thing I think that they think is the best move, but I guess this is the content podcast, so we'll get to that point. But that going somewhere was years and years down the drain of the wrong direction, and I should have been more focused on making stuff. But
it's so interesting because a lot of us have that story of, we were actors or we are actors, and then we made the transition to producing or filmmaking or directing or writing or all of the above. And we used it to either fuel our acting career, or we used it to transition to the career that we realized is really what we're meant to do. So we're meant to do, because I could speak English. For you, what was the transition to saying, I really shouldn't necessarily be in front of the camera? I know you still act, which we'll get to, but when did you make the transition from saying, I don't really necessarily just want to be in the story, I want to be responsible for creating the story and creating the world? And because you are a filmmaker, you're not just a director or a writer, like, you know how to use cameras and stuff, like you've DP'd, right? Or am I wrong?
I haven't DP'd.
I'm a horrible friend. He has not DP'd.
No. I knew that, again, with nerdy over analyzation and research, I looked up some study in the UK about the people, because I knew I needed to work. I never had enough money. There's no trust fund here, and my parents were supportive, but not financially. I looked up some study about who was the most likely to become a director, and it was editors and producers. And I don't even know if that's true. It's what I found when I was in LA in 2016. And I thought, okay, I don't have any editing equipment, so I will try to be a producer. And that's what put me on that path to producing the projects instead of trying to edit the projects. And that's when I started. I didn't even answer your question.
It's okay. I hate you. You're fine.
I know. Yeah, you mentioned acting. Oh, yeah. Because you said, actually, kind of like what I said earlier about acting, actually studying it and being interested in the process, that's what made me not want to do stuff in front of the camera more. Because, I mean, I don't mean any disrespect towards the actor, but as I'm sure you guys both know, you're a tool, basically. And if you're amazing, you're the most valuable tool on the set, but you are still kind of a tool. You're a piece of a big machine. And I think if for the types of people who find a lot of joy in creating a universe, that's just not an option that you have as an actor. Your job is to show up and serve the purpose of the character that's within that world that has already been created. And if you're amazing, like a Bryan Cranston type or something, of course, everyone's happy to have you there, and you are making something of your own simultaneously with those creators, and you guys are working in tandem to create something that's even better than what it was initially. But no, that was the draw away. So it's not that I wanted to do it. That same feeling from, I don't know, 2011, with Tron, I was like, I want to throw the disc, like being in the movie, the disc wars, the thing that they did. I was like, that could be me. But this wanting to make something transcend, it's way bigger than that. So I think it would be fun, but it's just the lifestyle of the actor, as I know, is just totally devoid, of control or options, or
Victoria, do we know that? Is that what we deal with on a regular basis? I think,
Oh, I never deal with that.
No, I know you. What is this? What do you mean? I don't have control? What are you
just don't
talking about?
Yeah, you don't walk in and go, "Excuse me, I won't be reading for security guard number 6. I will be the guy who throws the disc."
That's me, this guy.
In Tron 2.
Mm-hmm.
So tell Jared Leto that he's done here. No. So yeah, obviously, and the more I studied and figured out, this goes all the way back to Stallone with Rocky, and probably someone before that. That's the first example I can think of where somebody just goes, "Oh, if I make it, I'm in charge and I can also be in it." I'm just, at this point, one of my failures, if that makes sense, I burned myself once really badly on one of my first productions because I said I would be in it, and I was so stretched thin. I'd done so much on that project, like written, produced, location. I mean, everything that you have to do when you're doing a project yourself, right? And I had a big crew, really stupidly ambitious, and there was like 30 people there because everyone was very excited because they knew what I produced the heck out of it, but I didn't leave any time to get interested in the acting side of it. And as soon as I sat down in front of the camera, it was one of the worst feelings ever because I was like, oh no, I didn't give any attention to this. So it's more just out of convenience and necessity at this point that it's better off that I just don't get in front of the camera because it's just too much work. But I mean, anytime a friend calls and they go, "Can you do this?" I go, "Sure," because it's just the only thing that you're doing. So to the Jim Cummings and the Mark Duplass people who pull it off, amazing. For the people who can stay focused, acting while doing other things, I think that's great. I've also seen what it looks like on a Hollywood level, so they don't get the same sympathy because someone who, quote, acts and directs in a movie, like, trust me, there's 3 people supporting them in both of those roles with a total of, I don't know, 6 to 9 assistants, on each job. But when the movie comes out, there'll be, quote, lead actor and director and other things. But there were people there to help. There were people there actually directing, actually, here's your juice, sir. Like, there's just so many. When you're at the top, they don't have to worry about the same things that you do on an indie level.
So you talked about one of your original projects, which I can't pronounce the name, so I won't try, but you could say it. Nephilim, the Nephilim.
Well, yeah, it's about the Nephilim, but
about the Nephilim.
The working title for years has been The Last Domain. Which, side note,
yes.
Don't do working titles. Figure out what the title is because the working title becomes the title.
Yes, Victoria knows all too well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. If you don't name that thing soon, that's it. You're stuck.
Yeah,
with it.
No, it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah. And you know what? When you try to change, I tried to change the name Jordan from The Last Domain, and I kind of announced it to my inner circle. I was like, "All right, guys, great news. There's a new name." And everyone was like, "Yeah, it just doesn't work. Last Domain feels right." And I'm like, "You don't know. You just like it because it's what's been here for years." And they're like, "Yeah, I don't care. That's the cooler name." And no matter what I did, I couldn't, like, whatever. Stuck with it.
So speaking of The Last Domain, I know you were working that for a while, and I want to talk about how you got started on that project and what was kind of like the inspiration behind that, because that's like your big magnum opus at the moment. But when I first started trying to create some stuff with you and I know Victoria's going to jump on this, hopefully, we both were huge, like, Comic-Con nerds. And we were trying to make a Power Ranger film or Power Ranger inspired film called Ranger, which I think you have to talk about because it was very cool.
Well, yeah, you're part of the inspiration for that short film because, yeah, that was decided in a week. Because if you recall, so Victoria, I don't know if Jordan had told you this or not. When I met her in New York and we started talking, and I was like, I want to make a Power Rangers fan film, and I don't care about other people who've done it. I got this idea and I think it's really cool, and it's about ageism and this and that, and it was just really talking way too much at length. Shocker. And she was very helpful. She was teaching me how to. I think you taught me how to use Google Drive at the time, which made me feel really dumb. But thank you.
Did I really?
Yeah, you did. I did not. You were very helpful. You were producing it, and we were getting ready. And it was fall of 2015. I had 30 or so tabs open on my computer, and I was getting ready to drop $3,600 in student loans and Jordan, you'll remember this, from people all over the world who had Power Ranger suits, and from a helmet manufacturer in Japan, and people who were going to build glass that shatters. I had this whole set planned. A mountain of nerdy notes. And people at school knew I was going to do it. They were very excited. They were like, it's going to be all. That's why I had such a big crowd, right? Because they just knew I was going to do something. And then I had to change it at the last second because someone came up and he said, "Hey man, are you seeing this Power Rangers fan film that's going around right now?" And I thought, what? So I just went to the back of the cinema vault and I get out my phone and I watched Joseph Kahn's Power Rangers fan film, which was just destroys it's just unfair to even say fan film when you have Taylor Swift's music video director making something for fun with his talent and his budget, which I'm sure was low for them. And I know it was a passion project for them, but even still, I mean, compared to me, it took the wind out of my sails big time. And there was a little note, Jordan, do you remember my friend Dylan Stein, who you met in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Yeah, he DP'd he was going to always DP. He's a director now, but he DP'd the Last Domain proof of concept trailer. And he told me that day, he was like, I was like, we're done. It's over. There's a feature film that's just been announced. Now this fan film's announced. And he said, "You know what, man? I think what you have is really cool. I think you should still make it just in case that feature film sucks." And I was like, "No way. It's going to be amazing. This is a feature film we're talking about. They're going to blow it out of the water." And sure enough, I don't know what it was, like 2017, that Power Rangers movie comes out and we all just started texting each other and we were like, shoot, that sucks. We should have done it. Because it did stink. I don't care. That was a terrible, underwhelming movie.
It was a terrible movie.
Did you see it?
Of course I saw it.
Jordan, did you see it?
No, but
I
do know who Dacre Montgomery is, or however you pronounce his name now. That's all that matters to me.
He's the guy. He's a stud, man.
Oh, he's
a good
great.
looking dude.
This can go to translating my content. He was making all last year, so like original content, like posting his audition, because his whole audition for Stranger Things was his Stranger Things audition went like viral. And
was that on his Instagram or something?
Yeah, I think it was on his Instagram, and then he started posting a lot of other things, and then he had like a podcast. He's just a guy that really hustles and loves the craft. Yeah, he was like doing these readings of these poems.
Him a follow, lucky him.
Yeah, lucky him. No, I will say it's very impressive to watch some of young Hollywood really not just wait for jobs, and I think this goes to a lot to like what we're talking about, which is being proactive towards your career. They're not like waiting for the next job to come their way.
I was really interested when you were talking earlier about the tax incentives, because I feel like the one thing a lot of filmmakers don't understand, or they don't do enough research on, because they just kind of think it's either LA or it's New York and it's nowhere else. I guess if you're
now
a
it's
geek,
Atlanta.
Well, hold on. Well, now with being a geek, people are like, but Marvel's in Atlanta. And if I want to be a superhero, I got to go to Atlanta, kind of thing. And The Walking Dead is in Atlanta and the Tyler Perry studios are in Atlanta. So people are kind of thinking LA, New York, or Atlanta. But you were talking about how you were researching tax incentives in other states. Can you talk more about that?
I mean, I can, but from several different perspectives. So we'll have to hone in on which one, because now, and what I think will be in support of what you guys are trying to discuss on this podcast, I am, on one hand, it's a total waste of time to dive into that, because if it's not something you're dealing with yet, then you just shouldn't worry about it. I was looking at it prematurely. I should have been more focused on making something. But I just kept trying to think about where the future was going to sprout up. But the most, a blanket statement that I can make about tax incentives is this: don't bank on it. Because all right, I'm going to have to count: Wilmington, Atlanta, New York, Austin, New Orleans, LA. That's 6 different film cities that I moved to for the sake of film alone. And things change. Like Louisiana tried to do this thing, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. They tried to cap their film incentive. The simple interpretation of that, for no one who wants to be bored by the numbers, is it scared everyone off. And Georgia just became a vortex. And everyone just thought, well, we'll just go to Georgia. And politics go hand in hand with state tax incentives. Wilmington, North Carolina used to be a hotspot. They were fighting. They had Iron Man 3 shoot there. They have a Screen Gem studio there. They had One Tree Hill, all these other shows that they have a great setup there. But because the state tax incentives, someone was voted in, I don't know who, and I don't know. All I know is this, just pay attention to the percentages. If you're in Georgia, when you play your cards right, you can get 35, I think in Savannah, up to close to 40%. Just think, higher the percentage, the better. And North Carolina, in the meantime, they went backwards. They went down to like 14 or 10 or something. And again, I could be wrong, but I'm right in the sense that they went down. I just don't remember the numbers exactly. A few years ago, you might recall Michigan they were putting in a good effort. And then you had some stuff filming there. I think Transformers, maybe. I worked with a PA who was on Transformers there. It doesn't matter, of course, because then someone else comes in and they go, whoa, 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 get that out of here. Because, when people are going for politics or whatever seat they want, they have to appease the people. And film incentives are so hard to pitch people on because it's money that you can't see. You can't see the $100 tip that Michael Bay gives to the waitress while he's in town. You can't see the tips that they give to the cleaning person or the beers that the crew buys when they go out every other night. There's just so many ways that the film industry brings money to town that people can't bank on. So some states that can't afford to, they just play it safe and they bail on it. Again, someone who actually knows what they're talking about could come in and just say he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But from a street level, that's what it looks like. That's what happens. And then some states got scared and bailed. Louisiana actually came back and has a better incentive than what they had before. And I don't know that they ever recovered the same way because Georgia, and then you have to think about who's doing something at the same time. One day, I hope some behind the scenes court of people high up come out and release their book on, they say, how we cleaned up Atlanta. I don't care what anybody says. Atlanta used to be called the Dirty South. You remember, like, people said that stuff. That's not me. I'm not making that up. And I'm not biased because I say that. That's what people called it, right? Like, it didn't have a reputation. It wasn't the city. People didn't talk about it the way they talk about it now. And now it's so obviously a film city, if not the film city, that people talk about. So at Atlanta and Georgia, whoever it was, they went all in and they just committed. And even though the numbers were probably really ugly in the beginning, look at how it paid off.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask is because, especially, we're talking about the consequences of especially how the film industry has changed in the last year, especially with 2020. The things that Jordan and I have been looking at and worried about is that you look at states like California, New York, where they're still hard hit with COVID. There's still a lot of restrictions in place in order to film anything in these two states. And, she and I were thinking for a second, I was like, well, where would be a nice substitute to go to film? Because we have like maybe 3 or 4 projects that we could film in other states right now, whether it be Florida or Atlanta or Austin, Texas,
Philly or Jersey,
or Philly or Jersey. And it's one of those questions of like, well, where is the safest bet to go? What's the tax incentives like? What would be the most appealing to us in other states? Because it's now a new question people need to ask. Well, if it can't be California, New York, where could it go? Is it even Canada?
I also want to piggyback on something that you said, Codey, which goes off of Victoria's question, which is when we were first friends and stuff, and you moved to DC, I was also going to Baltimore a lot and DC a lot for work, because Baltimore and DC were starting to have like an uptick. Like, that's when House of Cards first came out and there was a big entertainment uptick, but then that thing whole changed.
Right.
It's, people don't understand how, like, Baltimore was slowly transitioning to be better. They thought it was going to help, the economy. Thought it was going to bring a lot more attention to the area and the opportunities there. And like Atlanta beat out everybody. But, I think that, like, for you and what you see now, just to go back to Victoria's question, like, where do you see is the potential new frontier for filmmaking?
Well, I'm biased that I'm blinded by my own bad experiences. I've joked several times now. I don't know what'll actually make it into your final cut here, but several times,
Nothing.
several times I've said how moving all over the country was the wrong move. I should have just sat home and made something, but I kept overanalyzing and trying to outthink my circumstances. So when you say, where do you think the best place is to go? This is such a lame textbook answer, but I would say personally, in my experiences of moving to 6 different film cities and having moved 14 times since high school, I should have just stayed in my own backyard and done it, because when I shot my short film at home and then I shot that proof of concept footage, because it's in Virginia where I'm from, you just have a comfort where you are. I mean, and I could do that in other places now, but there's nothing like being home. You're from Connecticut, right? I mean, tell me you couldn't go home and just talk your way into the bar, the coffee shop, the hotel, the this, the that. I mean, when I shot a bar scene, it was a guy who knew me from high school, and he announced the football games, and that's how he knew me, because I played football. But we never had a personal relationship. And I said, "Hey, can I film in your bar?" He said, "Absolutely." And when we showed up on the first night, he throws me the keys to his bar. And he says, "Yeah, just lock up when you're done. If you stay all night, just put the keys in the mailbox in the morning." Like, this was crazy, and this was after having lived in LA the first time. So I was like, what is good? And then it was the same experience with a bunch of other vendors and locations. I shot in the caves of Natural Bridge, Virginia. And because it's not a film city, it was a little awkward at first. They're like, "Oh, I don't know about a film crew coming down to these caves that we're trying to preserve, but you seem nice." And so we did, and we just end up deep in Middle Earth shooting in these caves. And so I would say personally, go where you can pull it off. But if you're specifically trying to talk about tax incentives, if you're all about the money, yeah, Georgia's doing great. Actually, Oklahoma pops up. I had an indie producer reach out to me from Oklahoma saying that their state tax incentive is competitive with Georgia's and stuff. So I guess it's more about, is that incentive really going to be worth it? Or are you better off at home? Because I know for me, and I'm frustrated that I'm doing this because it feels like backtracking. I'm thinking of coming back to the East Coast and to Virginia, because Virginia is a right to work state like Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much you know about the ins and outs of that. I actually can't explain all of it. I just know that some people can be union and other people don't have to be. That can get messy. It's also very beneficial for productions. It's a mess right now for them because of COVID. When they shut down, there are crew that aren't being compensated for the shutdowns, but the people from LA are, and I'm not going to say anymore because I don't want to get in trouble. But
Florida is a right to work state, because we were doing a lot of work in Florida because we were quarantining there for a period of time. Florida's a right to work state. Georgia's a right to work state. I forget the other ones, but what I like about right to work states that I find, it's hard for actors but great for producers.
Yeah.
That's what I would say is the opportunity. But I really love what you're talking about using your own backyard. A lot of people come to us and say, "How do you get started? Like, what do you do?" And Victoria, you could talk about this, but the fact that, like, a lot of the times when we make stuff, what do? We cast who we know. We cast our friends, or we ask our friends to help us on sets. We work within the confinements of the relationships that we have. I think a lot of people are so distracted by the shiny camera. Like, I know there was a year, and I probably said this before already, but there was a year where, like, everyone's like, "I need a red camera. Do you have a red camera? We need to get a red camera." I'm like, a red camera is so hard to edit. Just use what you have and make it awesome. Understand, like, if you're dedicated and passionate about what you're creating, I think it'll really show through. And I love the idea of just do it versus waiting for, go where the money is or go where this is, because of the fact that, like you said, you were able to make a great film, which we should probably talk about what your film's about since you referenced it. But I just think that, to hear someone that's traveled to so many different cities to say, "Hey, at the end of the day, I really just would have liked to start where I know and what I felt most comfortable in." I think that's really inspiring to a lot of people who are kind of like, "Well, I don't live in LA. I don't live in New York. I don't live in a town where people support the arts in that way, and it's an everyday occurrence."
And, to be honest, it's not inspiring. I hate it. I hate saying it because I know, but hear me out. I hate it because I heard it a million times when consuming. So when did I meet you? I don't know, 6-7 years ago. At that turning point in life, I became a podcast monster, and I've listened to every interview, every masterclass, everything I can get my hands on. And the answer's been there all along. It's go and do it yourself, go and make it yourself. And I kept trying to make it rocket science to try and out scheme it or outthink it. And the truth is, it's really right there. And because it's been so long at this point, I wouldn't just be going to Virginia or going home or wherever's next to make one film. I'd be going there to make 3 minimum. features, plus 2 or 3 shorts that are pitches for other features. Maybe turning The Last Domain into a web series to try and build a community. I don't know. There's so much stuff because now the content pool, my cup runneth over from all this time of not actually making something and just writing stuff. So yeah, I mean, I would just say to get in the position where you are most likely to make something, because all of that moving that I've done. So I spent the last year in Austin aggressively making friends, and that's fine. I pulled it off. I've got enough people who I could call on now to shoot a film there, but I already had those people back where I'm from. I spent a year networking, and I'm so glad I met new people, but I was just building something else that I already had, and I'm saying this as a bitter, frustrated person who doesn't have the content that they wish they had made. And just the content talks, man. It really talks like nothing else. I know I'm kind of like segueing on my own here, but I looked at one of your questions and you said, what's something a regret about content or something? And I just wish I had more because, for example, I guess I shouldn't say them yet because I don't know how this is going to end, but there's a production company who I really admire. And I got lucky to get connected with them through a writer who I told you about a few days ago when we connected. And this producer who has seen 2 of my concept trailers, so excited about the Last Domain projects. And he's like, yes, let's turn it into a show. Oh my gosh, it's all there. And I've told him, I'm like, well, there's a feature, there's a show, there's 4 web series episodes that I have written. Where do you want to start? What do we do? And they're thinking show, I think, just because that's what's the thing right now, big, recurring, regular money, I guess. And I got excited because I was like, oh man, someone's interested. This is great. And I said, do you want to see more of my stuff? And they say, absolutely, send it over. Hopefully he never hears this. Like, I send it over, it's like I have this one of those features I just mentioned that I want to film. I send it over. It's crickets. I love that feature. I think it's far more interesting than the Last Domain thing. So I send him something else. I go, hey man, I'm actually trying to write aggressively while we're all stuck inside. Do you want to see it? Absolutely, man. Send it over. Send it over. Nothing. And I kind of brought it up on our last meeting call together. And the thing is, they're just so much more excited about The Last Domain. In my personal opinion, is it's just because the trailers are there. It's just because the content is there and they can see it. And I used to be frustrated with people who would just talk about their ideas and be like, all right, man, you got to write a script or a treatment or something, and they wouldn't write anything down. Now I feel as though without some sort of content that is a proof of concept, even having a script and a treatment is kind of the new version of just talking about your idea. Like you just kind of have to do it. This connects to me saying you have to just do it somehow or get it done. And this is from speaking from a failure perspective of saying, I wish I had done that, not I had done that.
Well, I think you did something that I've mentioned before, and we deal with this on a daily basis, is that a lot of people, they come up with just these ideas and all they do is say, hey, I have this great idea. And I'm like, great, you have this idea. What now? Like, well, I want, I've said it before and I don't care if this gives me flack. I hate pilots. I'm a big anti-pilot person because what we've seen, Victoria with Victoria's show, we've traveled the world with it. We've gotten to see what people are doing in South Korea, what people are doing in Brazil, what people are doing in Germany, people are doing in England and Italy and all over the world outside of the pod of the United States, how people are creating content. And they're making this amazing stuff. And they're shooting like crazy and they're using their resources. They're using local, talent and local government and bringing tourism and all these great things and really capitalizing on the resources. And they're either making full series or they're making concepts to showcase their idea, but they're not just making like, I've made this one, because I think a lot of the times, and I know that I'll get hate and I really don't care, but I think a lot of times pilots are vanity projects because they spend a lot of money on these pilots in hopes that it's so great that some network is going to see it at ITV Fest and be like, oh my God, where has this been my whole life? And the reality is that there are plenty of people like we were talking about this the other day, and it's a big topic today because it's in the news. Issa Rae is doing the final season of Insecure, and she was involved in LA Web Fest. I just
watched her masterclass.
Yeah. You were talking about this the other day. Issa Rae was part of LA Web Fest. I think Victoria, didn't she win like one of their awards like a few years before we went together? Their writing awards.
I think that was Miami. Was that LA Web Fest?
LA Web Fest, yeah, with Michael yeah, so they were talking about that, and then she made this web series, and like that's what got her start, and it was all about creating your own content. Like I think that you should make your own content. I'm very for that, especially now with 2020 being what it was, and making your own content and just taking control of your own career. But I think that with these pilots, like that's not the way to do business anymore. You have to do a full series, or do like you have with a concept trailer. People are excited because you're like, this is my idea, and this is a taste of what I want to create, and then here's a full script. You're showing a moving storyboard that I really think drops people into the world, where you're not saying like, oh, I made this pilot, I'm looking for you to just fund the whole thing, but make sure that I'm still like, it's me. Like, I just think that it's what you've done and why you've gotten so much a great response from that trailer. You put your heart and soul into it. It really wasn't, I think, a waste. I think it was really beneficial to your career. And I think that's the way people should do business now, is taking a concept trailer or making a full series. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well,
what do you think is the new process of how can you pitch a project? I mean, you went to, speaking of consequences, you went to Austin last year for South by Southwest, and that was one of the big kind of driving forces for you. And I remember you were actively participating in like pitch fests and things like that.
yeah.
What's the process that you originally went through pitching your project? And I would love to find out also about your decision to do film versus web series or vice versa. But what was the process for pitching then, and what do you think the process for pitching is now?
I haven't pitched officially. I can't tell if I'm doing this right or wrong, but I got somewhat lucky. But I was talking to this. I was about to go to the Game of Thrones panel with Benioff and Weiss, and I was standing in a coffee shop line, and I saw the guy behind me was a panelist by his badge, and I just tried to get. Can I say ballsy? I tried to. No, I won't say that. I tried to get brave, and I just turned around. And I said, "Hey, man, can I buy your coffee?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, can I buy your coffee?" And he said, "Sure." And thankfully for me, we were stuck in line for like 15 minutes. And we start talking about bulletproof coffee. He'd never heard of it. Next thing he's a writer from LA. I'm a veteran. We're exchanging information. And because of that 15 minutes, he said, let's go sit over here and talk for a bit. So we talked for about 20 minutes. And he said, you know what, man, I like you. Here's my email. Let's talk. That was, my gosh, 2019, I think. And that was the Austin Film Festival, actually, not South by. And I'm only correcting you because I bought my tickets for South by and I didn't get to go because it got shut down. So now I just have this dead ticket or something. But I tried to stay in touch, and I was getting my trailer ready, which I'd showed to you a few times because I've been preparing for years for this over-prepared crowdfunding campaign that I was getting ready to pull the trigger on in March. I was just going to do it myself in March of 2020. I was trying to be a few months outside of that Christmas season, right? Maybe people are feeling charitable again. I felt again like all the planning and the calendars and stuff. And and then the COVID March begins. So I thought, well, I can't ask people for money now. People are losing jobs, and then I lose mine. And then the year just never really stopped at all. So I tried to stay in touch with people. And around September, that's actually when I reached out to Brian Volk-Weiss, and I reached out to my VIP contact list just to kind of show him the trailer and say, hey, I want to pitch this. Do you have any advice? And I sent it to this writer, Henry. And he said, hey, I think I want to connect you with a producer I'm working with right now. And he did. And he jumped on it right away. And he was like, I want to pitch this. I want to include this in our spring pitch packet or whatever he called it. I don't quite remember how he referenced it, but I said, okay, like that'd be great. So I don't actually know what it's like to shop yet. I would like to be involved. I kind of don't want it to run away without me because I've prepared for so long to be a part of that process. I don't know, man. There's some days I'm comfortable with that. Some days I get ants in my pants and I just want to throw the trailer up on Kickstarter and see if if you build it, they will come. Attract bees with honey kind of scenario. I don't know. The waiting is kind of killing me because, like I said, the pitch video and all this stuff, which I should show to you sometime. It's really nerdy, like as pitch videos are. It's been ready for almost a year now, so just kind of not knowing what to do with it. But I feel like I've done all the work. Like the whole pitch is there and it's edited and it's drafts and drafts of scripts, and it's cut down, and so much time went into this pitch. I almost feel like it's a shame. Sometimes I just want to message them and be like, hey, if we're making the show, that's great. Can I still run a Kickstarter campaign just because I put so much time and effort into it? Like maybe we can just say I'm building an audience or something, because it just feels like a waste. I put more energy into that Kickstarter campaign that never happened. And then I got distracted by WeFunder a little bit when Jim Cummings and them were doing it. And I was like, oh, maybe this is better, but I don't know if I want to do the whole equity crowdfunding thing and because I've seen the way they have to answer to people and respond to them on there, because they're like, when am I going to get my money? So I'm like, oh, that doesn't look very fun. But so as far as pitching goes, what I just showed you with that Instagram thread with Brian, that's pretty much the extent of it. I sent it to people and I'm like, do you like it? Everyone said yes. I'm like, oh, great. I didn't think about what to do now. So that's kind of where we are with it.
The thing that I've been wanting to ask, because I'm from Texas and I never went to Austin, how do you like the Austin scene? I know there's also a huge gaming community there, because I did interview somebody that's like, oh yeah, there's like DC Universe Gaming there. But like, what do you personally like about Austin's film scene?
I think Austin is one of those film communities that is both non-existent and also has huge potential. They have the studio, Robert Rodriguez studio. They have people who show up once in a while to film. Austin is on the verge of being one of the next big cities. I know it's already Austin, but now to get super nerdy, Austin was Austin pre-pandemic. If you simply Google the numbers of the cities that most people moved to during the pandemic this year, Austin is the top of that medium city list. Ironically, Wilmington, North Carolina was one of the most moved to cities. Because everybody scattered and thought, what's the best place that's not New York City or LA? Austin has a future because Texas and, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, everybody else sees the same stuff, right? It's nothing new. Austin was already jammed up before. Now with this new influx, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would assume it has to be a good thing, that everybody just converged on one city. Now you're going to have all these people who want the same things. It's kind of like clean slate. People can build together and maybe raise that thing up together. So I don't know. I think it has a ton of potential, though.
Didn't Matthew McConaughey say that he was going to try and build more films bring more films there? Because I think
it would make sense.
I mean, he's from there too, but he was talking about how wanting to get the UT involved. He's
been aggressive lately. Yeah, he's a honorary professor or something at UT's film school now. So I think he's taking like a even more of a McConaughey interest in the area. And yeah, look, I mean, a lot of people are leaving LA. You call it politics, call it economics. I mean, there's several reasons people are leaving. So people want to the way that everyone speaks, they're going to speak to defend whatever it is that they want. So you have a huge crowd of people who left, and they're going to try to make it work. And it could be very exciting for everyone who lives there.
Give us a summary about what The Last Domain is about and why you're choosing between film versus web series or vice versa.
That's so what it's about is back to that week with Power Rangers, right? Where my Green Ranger film was ripped away from me by Joseph Kahn and company. We had a week to decide what to
I remember
do.
when you messaged me about that, you're like, Jordan, they made this thing. No.
Yeah, I was bad. And like that's what I told you. I had all the tabs open. I was going to order all that Power Ranger stuff that day and have stuff being shipped in from all over the country. So I just took those student loans and used them elsewhere. I used them to feed the crew and stuff, and for monster makeup, things that it worked out. But my second deployment, I had a friend. Her name's Caitlin. She was back home. And we grew up in a small Christian community. And she had said this word. I'm quoting my pitch video at this point, but I don't know how else to do this. She said a word that I'd never heard before. And that word is Nephilim. And I said, what is this gibberish? And she said, it's in the Bible. I said, no, nonsense. She said, yeah, it's Genesis 6:4. Look it up. So I do. And sure enough, Genesis 6:4, it says, and there were giants on the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. And then it goes right onto the flood saga, and you're left, if you really paid attention, thinking, I'm sorry, what? So it's this very sci-fi. I mean, obviously the Bible is pretty sci-fi, but it's not something that when you're going to Sunday school as a kid growing up, they're like, they get to the part with these little velvet characters on a wall. And they're like, and then Moses parted the Red Sea. And they don't go, and then the angels were sleeping with the women. And boy, did it get interesting after that. Like, they skip that part. They don't tell that. So I was like, well, this is fun. This should stir the pot a little bit. So I just kind of leaned into it. And it's by no means original. Nothing is. But at the same time, I wore my producer cap and I realized there is this huge internet underbelly of people who like to talk about this. It's like one of those hidden communities that's right there if you go looking for it. And I was like, boy, this would be really fun to navigate because there's an audience. There's a built-in audience for this because there's plenty of people within the Christian community. First of all, some of them, like myself, you just don't know about it. Then there's the ones who do, and they're either on the side of they pleasantly look away and they're like, well, scripture. And then there's the other people that are like, no, explain what that means. You don't get to just brush this off. What does that mean? So I was like, let's dive in. And so that's what we did. And I've tried to make it as cool and iconic and unique as possible. And that's where we are with it right now. With all of those moves to different film cities, I had to keep changing plans. So I thought, ooh, well, now it needs to be an indie feature. And then I moved again. I was like, ooh, I live in LA. I don't have the resources for this web series. So then I wrote a few web series episodes. And then now I'm in this writing situation with the production company and they're saying, give us the show. So now I've written a pilot and I have a series outline that I'm almost finished with. And then they have a synopsis for seasons 2 and 3 that they got out of me already.
You have that project, which is exciting. You have something to share because they're going to run out of content soon. I think we all know this. There's going to come a point in time with all the open and closing and the death of Quibi, which I knew was going to happen.
You're always picking on Quibi.
I am picking on Quibi because I think Quibi.
Quibi's about to go on Roku. Quibi's not dead.
I know. I called that too, though. I
thought Quibi was done.
Quibi is done. What we were discussing, right, is like Quibi had the great thing I loved about Quibi, which is similar to what we're doing with the stuff that we're doing with our network, is that there was a huge content acquisition process. Like, I think the beauty of streaming platforms, talking about transitioning from web series ideas, like what I love about streaming platforms is it's like real estate. But it's like ongoing real estate. There's just so much you can build and add and share and distribute because it's all online and it's international. Something that was made in the middle of nowhere could be online that's international by tomorrow. I love streaming television. The thing I loved about Quibi was that it really had an initiative to not only be unique in the sense of these quick bites, which wasn't that unique, but they have just curated all this amazing original content. And I was like, that's awesome. That's really great for people like us. We're looking for people that looking for new stories to be told. And when Quibi died, we were like, well, what happened to all of these shows that didn't have celebrities that were waiting to be in the next wave of releases on Quibi? They probably all had exclusive contracts with Quibi. And what happens when you have an exclusive contract with something that died, and you have to go through all this legality and there's a sea of other people just like you. So when I found out that Roku, which I assumed it was going to be Roku, because Roku's been also really passionate about content acquisition and network development and applications. They did a whole thing where I think it's going to be on the Roku channel. Like, Roku has its own OTT quote unquote place on its own network, its own device.
What's an OTT? Asking for a friend. Obviously, I know.
So OTT is this really silly term, which means over the transom or over the top. So the concept of it is like out of the box. So OTT is the buzzword for what I call a virtual network. So for example, like this is the world we play in on a daily basis. Like, we swim in OTT land all the time, where a lot of people come to us and they all want distribution, right? If I were to ask you, where do you want to be distributed? You probably would say, hypothetically, Netflix, HBO Max, what else? Amazon Prime. And by the way, it's different to be distributed through Amazon as a Prime service versus Amazon Studios. They're two very different things. One is their production house and content place. One is just like a pay-per-click idea. It's no different than like housing it on like Vimeo. It's just a different transaction. That's how I interpret it. That might not be the exact thing, but that's how I interpret it. Or you'll say, what's another big one, Victoria, that people say?
Hulu.
Disney Thank Plus. You. Disney Plus. So let's say you have a project and you're going to say, I want to be on one of these networks. Well, they're all technically OTT networks. Peacock, NBC's little little baby network, and then Sundance Now, and there's just a bunch of them. These are all
CBS
OTT
All
networks.
Access. It's a
CBS
lot.
All
There's
Access.
A lot.
There's a lot. The unique thing about it right now is that it's such a wonderful time for content creators because the fact that there are so many places that you can be seen, and there's no limit to the length of what you're sharing. You can have a short film, you can have a regular feature film, you can have a series that the episodes can be like. I talk about High Maintenance all the time about how their original shows were 5 to 7 minutes long, and then HBO was like, this is cool. It was the first show greenlit through Vimeo, and HBO was like, this is cool, and they bought the rights of the original stuff, and they greenlit full-length episodes on HBO. OTT is, because of the tech element with entertainment, which is where I believe the entertainment, I swear my TED Talk will be over in a few minutes, where I believe content to go. OTT is at the forefront, and you can make your own OTT network. So, and you have more options now. The devices that OTT platforms live on are like your smartphones, your smart TVs. Roku is a device that houses OTT networks. Fire Stick is a device that houses OTT networks. Apple TV is a device that houses. Apple also has Apple Plus, which is their network. They now have a network. But I think it's interesting if you think of OTT being like applications. If you think of all the apps on your phone, you can make an app that's a network that lives on these devices. There's more opportunity now to take control of your career if you know where to look. And that I'm very passionate about this. I'm sure you can tell.
That's awesome. Somebody has to be, because you said, who would you sell to or who would you work with? I mean,
where do you want to see? Like, where do you want to see your content?
Yeah, well, you said the obvious answers that most people would say. My answer would be, who's going to get to work with me the fastest, and if that's Chimichanga from Canada, I'll do it. Let's go. I mean, unless somebody advised against it and they're like, that, no, your thing is never going to be seen. You'll die there. You're better off uploading to YouTube. Sure. But if it's something such as Roku, like what you're talking about, then yeah, I'd go with them, but yes, obviously Netflix is at the top of that ladder, but yeah, the streaming wars they're heating up.
Yeah, I think it's great though to be able to say to somebody like, where do you want to live? When before it's like, these are the places that I have to go. You now can say, no, I choose. This is the niches that I want. Like, people think about, or people don't necessarily know that a lot of these networks are owned by similar companies. Like Viacom owns MTV, owns Paramount, owns a bunch of other ones. And it's just, I think there's more opportunity to be had. We just get lost in the archaic ways of doing things, which is, I have to go to a pitch fest, or I have to go to a film festival, or I have to, find an agent who likes my stuff enough to go pitch it for me. I think today, the fact that you're saying, I have this guy that I met that I personally created a relationship with. And not only have I created a relationship with them, I was like, this is my project and my baby, and I want to be a part of it, and the decisions made with it. I would say like 5 years ago, that probably wasn't a possibility for people. Maybe like 7 years ago, maybe not necessarily 5 years ago, but 7 years ago.
There's certainly a lot of ways that everything seems to, between technology, which is the great equalizer, COVID, the economy, everything that's happening, it seems as though there's a slow earthquake that's happening, and when we rebuild, there's going to be new stuff that wasn't there before.
So where can everyone find you, Codey? How can
Nowhere.
people find you?
I'm going
Nowhere.
away.
You're gonna go away?
She means only the social network. She doesn't mean your email address, your home
social security number. Everything.
She means your socials.
Your social
I
handles.
am on Instagram as Codey, because I thought it was funny to just say Codey, but I made it private because the fake accounts started to creep me out. Yeah, the fake accounts started to creep me out, man. And so when somebody sends me a follow request on Instagram or something, and if I can see that they're a real person.
Oh, a fake person friending you. Oh, you're talking about, I thought someone made a fake profile about you.
No, maybe.
Oh, that's why I got confused.
But I doubt it. I'm on Twitter. I don't do anything there. I don't know.
Codey's on LinkedIn. That's our new favorite thing. Codey's on LinkedIn.
Here's the answer. I have a website.
Hey.
I have a website that serves as an email catcher, and that's where I released my screenwriting and Trello video, because it's really just an email catcher, because I wanted to notify people of when our campaign came out. So I thought, how can I start collecting emails to let people know when the crowdfunding campaign starts?
Go check out his website. What's your website? Tell everybody the URL of your website.
It's CodeyWilson.com.
And that's Codey,
Codey.
Codey.
I have no say in the matter.
Well, I am so happy to talk to you. This has been fun. I'm glad we got to geek out and do all the fun things. I'm happy to know you and see that you're still trucking along with your filmmaking, because I do think you're a brilliant filmmaker and storyteller. And I'm looking forward to seeing The Last Domain, or whatever name you decide to give it when it's all done. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Content and Consequences. Again, this is your host, Jordan Elizabeth Galber, with
Victoria.
That's her.
Cherie. Bennett.
And scene. Thank you, Codey, for coming on board, and we'll see you guys next time in another episode.